Let's do an annual service on this 383 mag stroker. This engine's about 6 years old. And one of the first things I'll do is do a good visual inspection. You can see here we have corrosion coming through the transom assembly.
We're bringing the anchor up the other day, and Matt
We have corrosion around the exhaust pipe on both sides, port and starboard.
fix it. It looks like it's already been fixed once, and she's going to come up with this.
The manifolds appear to be original, which should mean they're time for replacement soon. You can see the corrosion starting to come through. First things first is we're going to pull the dipstick. Take a look at how the old oil looks. So I'll put a little bit on my finger, and I want to smell it. So this smells like a gas station. It's very rich with gasoline. So that points me to this engine's most likely misfiring. Get our dipstick out of the way.
Oh, okay. All right.
And install our extractor bottle. Just like that. And when we build pressure in the extractor bottle by pumping it, it creates a negative pressure in the bottle, which sucks out the oil. Once we see oil started, we're just going to let that drain. We'll drain all 6 quarts. And while the oil is draining, unscrew it. Alrighty, while the oil's still draining, you can make sure there's pressure in the bottle. And then up next, we can replace the IAC filter. This is basically a little air filter for the idle air control valve, and that helps your engine idle very steadily. You can see this one is black, so let's pull it out. You can see how dirty that old filter really is. Let's throw it in our trash bucket, or grab a fresh one. Like that, and you just want to squeeze it horizontally, push it into that slot just like that. It's ready to go. So all you can do is take your flame arrestor, put it back on, take the mounting bracket, put it back on, and it's 3 10mm bolts, or 3 10mm nuts, excuse me. I get these fairly tight, not tight enough to crack the flame arrestor, but tight enough to make sure it's sealed. And I heard the bottle suck air, so we're just gonna let it sit for a second. It looks like we got about 4 or 5 quarts out of it. Okay, once the oil's done draining, get our extractor bottle out of here. See how many quarts we pulled out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I like to tuck a rag under here the best I can. This oil filter can be a little messy. Grab our filter wrench. Pop it loose. When it popped loose, I'll have another rag ready. Unspin it. Take the rag. Catch as much of that oil as we can. Just like that. And it did spill a little right here, so we'll wipe that up. We can get this oily rag out of here. And get this next. With that all clean, we can open up our new fuel filter or oil filter. with the new oil filter opened up. There's no oil or grease on the O-ring. So I'm just gonna grab just a little bit, lube up the sealing surface. That way next year when I go to take it off, it's not very tight. And same thing as the fuel filter, you just put it on hand tight. Once it gets tight, that, quarter to half turn and it's done. Okay, next up we'll fill it up with engine oil. Okay, once we have the oil filter on, we can fill the engine oil. And before we take the cap off, I like to wipe the area up with the rag first so nothing falls into the rocker cover. Any dirt and grime. As you can see, it's definitely dirty. Unscrew our cap. You can actually see there is more grime right around it, so I'm just going to wipe it off with my finger. Take my funnel that's cleaned, put it in, and these engines take between 5 and 6 quarts. I pulled exactly 5 quarts out of it, so I'm going to put exactly 5 quarts back in it and double check the oil level. These engines use non-synthetic, just regular old conventional engine oil, 2540. Okay, with 5 quarts dumped back in, we can double check the engine level. So we're going to clean off the dipstick really good. And put it back where it goes. And you can see our oil level is right at the very top of the hash marks, which is perfect. The oil filter will suck it down a little bit and it'll be right where I want it. Okay, so we can put the dipstick back in place, grab our funnel, and try not to drip any oil anywhere. Reinstall our fill cap. And now we're going to do an ignition service. Okay, with the engine service done, the customer wants us to do an ignition service as well because he's misfiring. So what I like to do is number them, coil, and then the actual cylinder numbers that they go to. That way it just makes putting it back together a million times easier and quicker. And you can see how we have them numbered according to the cylinder that they correspond with. Okay, and then we're just simply disconnect the wires, and they can be a bit stuck, and sometimes you get smear off that you just put on. And that opens up the cap. Now, I knew this engine was misfiring before it came in for service. It's one of the customer's complaints. And as part of his annual service, we're going to do an ignition service. That includes the cap and rotor, which is what the piece you see here is. And I always like to take the screws out by hand and put them in by hand because it goes in a plastic distributor housing, and those corners on the distributor housing like to break out. And if you break that, you need to replace your distributor. And it's very possible, but it's definitely not as easy as just doing a cap and rotor. So we're going to take these out by hand, and now we have the rotor off. And with the rotor off, we can begin to see our date code. This is from 2023, and it doesn't look terrible, but we do see all this white, which is going to impede the connection. Let's see what our actual pin looks like. Once again, I like to do this by hand so I don't strip anything out on the distributor housing. So you can see there's a decent amount of buildup on the front of this. Get clean right off, so that was probably not helping the spark. Okay, so we'll grab our new cap and rotor. And with the new cap and rotor, we can install the new rotor. Grab the new screws supplied in the kit. And once again, start them by hand so you don't strip anything out, and you don't really want to over tighten these. And then we can get our back screw in place on the cap. Like that. And then with the back screw in place on the cap, we can drop it into place. And the only thing that's important in this step is just to make sure you're facing the cap in the right direction. So the coil wire, which is the extra leg on this, was facing me in this situation. So I know it's facing the right way now. So we get that one semi-tight. Grab our other new screw, put it back in the other corner. Get it hand started. Tighten it down. Once again, these ones you really don't want to go too tight. You don't want to strip out this housing. We'll double check that it's nice and tight. That it is. And we're going to give the distributors a slight twist to make sure there's no movement. And there's really not. Just a little bit of play in the cap, but that's normal. And then we can reinstall our plug wires. And thankfully I numbered them, so I don't have to do too much thinking, and I can just do it. Alright, we got our coil wire in here. Okay. And now we're going to move on to doing the spark plugs. Okay, so we're going to start doing the spark plugs. We can start by disconnecting the spark plug wires. Grabbing our ratchet with a 5/8 spark plug socket. Let's see how dirty these plugs are. Being at the Cap and Rotor didn't look like all that terrible. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't terrible. I suspect our problem's gonna be in here. Oh, look at that. That spark plug is toast. Very black, very full of carbon. That's where our misfires are going to be coming from. So now we're just going to go down the line and pull the other 3 out of this side. And I can feel the amount of carbon on these plugs, on the threads, just by unthreading them. Yeah, that one's just as bad. And a good bit of advice with spark plugs is I always unthread them by hand and start them by hand. On outboard engines, I will use an impact to pull plugs. They don't have a tendency of getting stuck quite like inboard plugs do. On inboards, I like to do everything by hand so I can feel it. Now, take our new spark plug. Brand new spark plug with just a little bit of anti-seize. Anti-seize is a very controversial thing in the marine mechanic world. Some people think you shouldn't use it on spark plugs. Well, the manufacturer of this engine, Mercury, does recommend you use it on spark plugs. However, the maker of the spark plug, NGK, recommends you don't. I'm going to go with the people who build the engine, not the spark plug. They designed the engine, so they built the manual for this engine. That's how I listen to it. And what I like to do is just start it by hand, thread it all the way in, just like this. With it threaded in, you grab your ratchet. All you want to do is seat the crust washer on the bottom of the plug. So, just like that. Quarter turn to half turn. All you want to do is crush this little bit of aluminum into the head. That's what makes the seal. Okay, and with the spark plugs are installed, we can put on the spark plug wires. So I make sure you grab the right ones here. Yep, this is the furthest one. Now typically, I wouldn't mind replacing spark plug wires in this situation too, but we're gonna hold off on that and see how it runs first. And we may be coming back and doing spark plug wires. Okay, and just like that, spark plugs are done. And now, here's a look at all 8. Very, very dirty and just full of carbon. Way past the due date for replacement. A plug looking like that could definitely cause a misfire. Alright, and the last step of the job, put the cowling back on the engine, and it's ready to go.